for them, but I am Ruth Ann Weeks. My business is Harmony in the Workplace. I sit on the Edmonton Steering Committee for Rainforest Alberta, and I am a guest host today. Quite normally, once a month, I'm usually a co-host. So I will try to make this as smooth and painless as possible. I am not as polished probably as Bridget and Amber, and I know that you're not getting the beautiful view here. I think you're getting my desktop, but we're going to go ahead with it anyway.
We've got a screen now.
Yeah, exactly. So that being said, in the spirit of reconciliation, we do acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy. So that's Siksika, Kiane, the Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, and the Yaxne, Yaxay, I practiced that one. Nakota Nations, the Métis Nation in Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta. And for us in the Edmonton area, we acknowledge the traditional lands of the Treaty 6 territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, as well as the Métis. These sacred gathering places do provide us with an opportunity to engage in and demonstrate leadership on reconciliation. So yes, we make that acknowledgement out of respect and consideration for Indigenous people. So welcome to the rainforest. I don't know if you've been here before. I am going to launch the poll, but I'm going to wait until this is done. So I'm not trying to do two things at once and end up messing it up. If you've not been here before, we welcome you. We love to share in the rainforest, and we'll just go through these slides. There's a little intro. Oh, okay, just a minute. We don't seem to have volume. Okay, I'm going to stop share. And I'm going to reshare it right from YouTube. Okay. One moment. Talk amongst yourselves.
There's a little button that you need to click if you want to share the sound.
The sound?
Apparently, yeah. That's just a little quite hard to see, but as you're going in, as you're opening the file, say, do you want to share the sound?
Okay, well.
And if not, then we'll just make it up.
There's three little dots here. Maybe that's it. More. Yeah, you know what, guys? Let's just do what I was going to do and just go back to, I'll just share a different tab. Are you seeing that video?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. It should play from there. Yeah, still having a volume problem. Okay, I'll tell you what, we're going to abort and we're just going to talk about the rainforest. The rainforest is an analogy. And what we talk about within its analogy in that rainforests, they're unlike farms, okay? When we have a farm, it's set up like a factory. It's understood and controlled. We want to control everything within that farm for maximum yield and production. In the rainforest, we create such an environment that anything can potentially root and grow into a good idea or a venture. We fail forward, we support each other, and innovation and diversity are very, very important within the rainforest. And we create that environment of safety where people can share, they're encouraged to share ideas and to support one another in the rainforest to grow baby ideas into ventures. We do have 6 pillars that we focus on. Organizational culture is one of those. And again, that's the trust piece, that environment of psychological safety. We grow leaders, we share resources, we engage in activities together. We do that within an infrastructure and we role model for one another and for those that want to get into the tech sector and the innovation ecosystem. We want you to get the most out of lunch without lunch. So please, we want a very active chat. Talk about what you're working on. We will have time at the end to talk about offers and things that are coming up, events. We will hopefully have time for breakout sessions to connect more closely with one another through some networking after our illustrious guest speaker. We do focus on one concept of the social contract, and today it's listening. So when we listen, we really ask questions and then lean in to what people are saying. I know right now within organizational culture, listening to your employees, listening to your customers and your clients is more important than ever. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they get everything that they want, but they feel heard. And when they feel heard, they feel supported. So thank you for sticking with me through that. I am going to introduce our illustrious guest speaker today, Freeman Beals. Freeman is the co-founder and CEO of Hatch Up Media. Growing up in small town tourism business showed him the variety of people in this world and the need to work and see the bigger picture. His time as a UX designer taught him how powerful creating with empathy and understanding can be. He now leads Hatch Up Media to create customer-centric solutions to business challenges. Welcome, Freeman. You should have ability here to screen share.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much. Let me see if I can throw this up here really quick. You're gonna have this prepared already. I had it and then I closed it. There we go. Perfect. Cool. So yeah, thanks so much for that introduction. That was great. I'll just jump right into it. Feel free to throw questions and stuff into the chat, and I'll hopefully give some time at the end of this to answer all those questions as well. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So today I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about kind of embracing user experience, kind of the practices, the methods that it has in that realm of thinking, and why I find it so important, how I really think it can benefit, us personally and also our businesses. So I'll just dive right into it here. So this was already covered a little bit, so I'm not going to go too far into this slide. But again, my name is Freeman, and this is all covered in the introduction. So smashing job there. I won't bore you guys with doing that again. I'm going to start off with one of my favorite quotes from Henry Ford, and he said, "If there's any one secret of success, it lies in the ability to get to the other person's point of view and see things from that person's angle as well as from your own." Now, we can all probably agree that Henry Ford was a very successful entrepreneur. He didn't really know anything about mechanics, didn't know a lot about vehicles, but he knew what people needed and what people wanted. And he was very passionate and driven towards that. And clearly saw a lot of success because of it. So let's cover what is UX. What is user experience? Wikipedia gives a really basic version of it. It's essentially how a user, customer, person, etc., interacts with or experiences a product, system, or service. It includes a person's perceptions of utility, ease of use, and efficiency. So fairly basic. Essentially, user experience is very much those exact two words. What is the experience that the person's going through as they're using that product? What's really important to me to grab from this, however, is that if we use that approach in our brand, in our product, in our services, we can really highlight the needs and wants of those potential customers that we're trying to get. The better we can understand them, the better that we can create products and services that are actually suited to them, right? So it's kind of, it grows on itself there, which leads me right into why it's so important. So if you can really understand your customers, your clients, whatever, you can avoid pitfalls based on assumptions and guesswork. You can take all that stuff kind of out of the way a little bit, not completely, obviously, because it's still, you're going to have to make some assumptions and guesswork, but you can make a much better approach to everything. So, a solid UX understanding of your client base really helps you ensure that you don't waste any resources. We don't waste that time on things that your customer might not even want or need, right? It also helps you highlight the most important things to them. So okay, I'm going to spend 80% of my resources on this thing because it's something that my customers and my clients are actually looking for. And this cartoon is a great example of, how you can have bad UX, right? You can still solve the problem. Obviously, these people need to cross this cavern or ravine or whatever. Are they having a great experience? Probably not. If you talk to those clients, would they say, yeah, I'm getting what I need, but the way that I'm getting it could probably be done a little bit better. So how does it work? Well, as mentioned, a good UX really helps you, define your product and service for the most value to your customers. So you can really identify and compare that with what you have to offer. So I'd always tell people you don't have to completely reinvent what you're doing, right? Because it's still who you are, it's what your business is, what you're passionate about. You don't want to get rid of that, right? However, what you want to do is harness this lovely little spot here in the middle. So if you know what your business is, what your customers want, there will be overlap. Finding and identifying that overlap is huge. Now you know what you can push a lot more resources in, what you're going to get a lot more ROI on. I'm not going to dive into the semantics too much about how it all works, but you can essentially gather a bunch of information from your user base, and you distill that information down into what exactly that user base is looking for. So now on to a little bit more about why I think this is so important and why I'm such a huge advocate for it. And you're probably going to see a few of the rainforest social contract ideas in here. And this is what I really wanted to touch on today. So for me, it's really important on a few things. The biggest one is user experience is really about the people, right? Businessing and marketing and all this stuff is so often focused on business goals and keeping stakeholders happy and bringing in, revenue and sales and increasing profit margins and stuff like that. What tends to happen because of that is our customers, our users start to be looked at just as resources, and we forget that they're actually people on the other end of this as well, right? And that's just a huge thing for me, because it just, you remove the humanity out of your marketing and messaging and stuff like that. And it just, if we look forward to where that will lead eventually, it's not a great place, not a great future if all of the marketing is just treating us as dollars. So really kind of shifting that focus and kind of get reconnected with that human side of our consumers. This one's big for me as well. It's about empathy. So empathy is huge. Empathy is a hard thing to harness, to gather, to teach as well. People often say empathy and sympathy, they use them kind of together, but they're not the same thing at all. Sympathy is about sort of feeling bad for somebody, a group of people, a movement, even a business. Empathy is more about understanding and sharing in that feeling with that business, with that company, stuff like that. If we can really empathize more with the people in our lives and in our businesses, our coworkers, our boss, our customers, our loved ones, our family, it really helps us communicate far more efficiently and openly, right? It opens a lot of other bridges to some of the other things that I'm going to talk about, like trust and sharing and listening. So into trust. So imagine this, if you could, imagine if your customers or your clients could simply trust that you created or did something the right way. You didn't have to convince them of that, right? A couple of good brands that do this really well, right? Nobody questions Harley Davidson when they build a new machine that it's built with quality and performance in mind, right? Nobody questions Apple when they release new products if it's innovative and top of the line. We just trust that those brands are going to do that because they've developed a brand of trust in understanding what we're looking for as well, right? So that's really big. We trust these brands to advocate for the same things that we advocate for. This one's big as well. It's about diversity. So this one I find really interesting and kind of was a big light bulb for me when I discovered some of this stuff. So by emphasizing with the people around us, we quickly realize that we're all vastly different, right? There is no cookie cutter approach. We all have different needs, different wants. Sure, there might be some similarities, but again, we're all different people, right? UX practitioners often have to talk about the difference between inclusive and exclusive design. Alrighty, some of the most astounding things have come out of exclusive design practices. One of my favorite ones is the typewriter. The traditional typewriter came out of the idea that people who were blind or who had a muscle impairment couldn't write. And then it was actually a bit frowned upon for people who were doing creative work on a typewriter. Well, the typewriter is now why we have keyboards. It's a huge part of how we communicate with everybody now. So if we hadn't designed with that diversity and that exclusive design practices in mind, something as revolutionary as the typewriter, the keyboard, and written text would have, taken a lot longer to come around. So it's incredibly powerful. And this is a great example of it really showing you why it's so important to keep that in mind when we're designing and stuff like that. The big one, it's about listening more. So we talk a lot about building trust and empathy and recognizing our differences and stuff like that. If all we're doing is talking, We can't learn from anybody. So we need to be able to listen more. So in order to understand your customer, you need to let them do the talking more often. So, find out from them what it is they're looking for. You can't just be telling them what they want. We need to find out what they want, what they need, what their problems are, right? Once we understand that, then all we have to do is present them with that information. Here's the solution to your problem. Here's the thing that you've been asking for. And here's the thing that you want, right? Instead of trying to guess and tell them, oh, here's the thing you want. No. Here's the thing that you told me you want, right? Far more powerful. So being honest and sharing. So transparency is a big word that everybody's using right now. Transparency in business, transparency in everything, right? Transparency involves, a two-way street onto this thing, right? How can you be trusted if you are not open and honest about what it is that your business is doing, what it's striving for, what your business values are, right? It's very hard for a customer to connect with your values if you're not telling people what those values are, what it is that you stand for, what it is that you want to achieve and do with your business, with your brand, with your product, right? So really ensuring that your company has a clear and open message about why it's doing what it's doing will encourage customers to feel confident in understanding that as well, because they'll connect to it, helps build that trust, right? This is how businesses build loyalty, right? Not just more consumers, but they build loyal consumers who will follow them, who trust in what they're building. So in conclusion, big wrap up, mainly 9 topics. It's about understanding your user and customer is very important, right? We know that. Developing products and services that fit their discovered needs and solve their identified problems is critical. Discovering that overlap between your business values and your customers' values will help you identify, okay, here's the things that I should really focus on. Remember that we're all humans, okay? We're not resources, we're not dollars to be made, we're all humans, we all have beating hearts, we all have thoughts and opinions that are our own and needs that we have that are separate from other people's. Empathy is not sympathy. It's far more important than sympathy. Building trust is a two-way street. It's very important both for you to be open and honest with your customers so that they can trust you, and vice versa. Embrace and design with diversity. Alrighty, it's huge. It's really important. Listen more than you speak. Be honest and share openly. All right, and there we go. So I'm gonna move that down so that you can talk and I can see people and stuff like that. But thank you guys so much for your time. Hope everybody kind of pulls something from that, definitely. And I'm sort of very happy to answer any questions, fill up any spots that you feel I might have brushed over too quickly, want to go back on some stuff, all that stuff, let me know. And I will stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Freeman. That was wonderful. We do love to hear your voices. If you have questions and you'd like to unmute and ask a question, someone can go ahead. Otherwise, if we start tripping over each other, just use the raise hand and I'll just call on you.
Okay, what's the difference between a need and a want, and which one's the most important?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And a lot of it comes down into, a lot of it has to do with what service and type of product you're creating, right? A lot of services and products aren't really ever going to be needs. They're going to be wants, right? If you're designing for health practitioners, well, those users probably have a need. That service is going to need to do something. What is it need that it needs to do to solve that? Versus a want is more of an emotional, what does that person want this product to do, if that helps. But a need is more of a problem. Want is more of a, a desire.
You go right ahead, unmute yourself.
Hey, Freeman, how's it going?
Good, thanks, Martin. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. What was really interesting from your slide deck is I'm not sure if you came up with all this organically, but I kind of did, and it was really interesting. So I've been developing integrated hardware software products for about the last 35 years now. And one of the things that has come up over the last sort of 5 years is requirement solicitation. And I was just watching your, watching your presentation, and it's like the light went on. It's like, this is requirement solicitation. So tell me, how do you go about it? Do you have a checklist you start with, or is it just a sort of to and fro sort of learning organically about the person and the customer that you're dealing with?
Definitely, it depends a lot on. I mean, like again, there is no cookie cutter approach to any of these things. It depends a lot on where a business is, what its capabilities are, where its resources lie, and timelines as well. It is very much a. I always tell people it's like having a bunch of tools. So the more tools you can have in your toolbox, you know, the better chance you can have, right? If a mechanic only had a single wrench, he wouldn't be able to do a lot, right? But he's going to have lots of different wrenches, lots of different, you know, sockets, different things with angles, so that he can have specialized things to do specialized things depending on the need. And then when you're presented with a problem, you pull the tools that are needed out of that toolbox. Is sort of the way that I kind of look at that.
Thanks, Freeman. That's awesome. Thank you.
I agree with Martin about this is requirements 101, but just with a bit of more of a flavor to kind of needs and wants. And then I'll go back to Gary's question as well. There's you know, the wants and the needs are defined often if you're building something that is intended to save a bunch of money or make some money or be very commercial, or, you know, I would think this is just knit into, this is just a modification, I think, and you know, correct me if I'm wrong, to just doing requirements with a bit more sensitivity to the users. Is that about right?
That's exactly it. Yeah. And I really like what you said there, Peter, was that sensitivity to the users. That's definitely something that, you know, totally, like all this stuff is, it's not news to anybody, especially not in business, right? You know, we all know that we need to solve problems and stuff like that. But what I see happening a lot, especially in, you know, in marketing and bigger businesses, is that lack of sensitivity towards the user. And again, that lack of empathy, and, you know, not creating things for them, but just creating things to kind of shove into their faces and try to convince them that they need.
Great. Did that answer your question, Peter?
Oh yeah, that's good. No, I'd love to see the whole framework for it. Because it like I say, it is a modification to requirements, and we're all out there doing requirements review for lots of different projects. So it's an important piece. So yeah, thanks. With that,
Mike.
So I'm going to refer back to Henry Ford. He also said that if he'd asked his customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. And I'm wondering how you approach that that problem where the customer doesn't really understand what they want.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something that I've definitely given a lot of thought to, because it is true, right? Like people. The iPad is another great example of something that people weren't aware of that they needed or wanted before it existed, much like the car and the horse. So one thing that I've always taken into consideration when I'm doing these things is kind of one of the reasons why I talk about finding what their problems are and then working from those, right? So if you were to talk to, if Henry Ford would have talked to his customers about, okay, what problem are you having? Or not what you wanted, but what problem was it? Well, it was like, oh, I can't get to where I need to get to soon enough. Okay, how can I solve that problem then, right? One answer being a faster horse, right? Another answer being, you know, a different mode of transportation. And again, that's kind of narrowing into one thing. There's probably multiple problems that was there, right? Okay, now I have to, like, you know, house these horses and look after them, and I have to buy them, and I can't, you know, I got to feed them, and they're getting hurt and injured, and, you know, the streets are congested. You know, there's a multitude of problems that, you know, the automobile may have solved. Is there a place in you know, in business and in innovation for just testing things without that completely? You know what I mean? I think that the automobile might not have solved problems when it was first invented. I have to speculate a little bit. I think the biggest thing for me is that what I said is definitely not a one take all approach to doing something. It's part of a bigger way of looking at something.
I have a question that was sent to me privately, Freeman.
Mm-hmm.
How do you manage the subjectivity bias of the customer to get a holistic perspective?
Good question. Yeah, a lot of that has to do with being very careful with how you ask questions, how you do surveys. Part of the reason I did what I did as a third-party consultant was to get around a lot of those biases that do come up. It's sort of, taking a humble approach to it, and, going into those conversations in whatever form they take with your customer, the user base, with an idea that you don't have the answers yet. Even if you do and you have a plan in place, that's great. You do need to enter those in with a complete air of, I'm just looking for information right now. Hopefully that answered that question.
Yeah, I think so. I have a question. Yeah, I think we're all caught up on everybody's questions. I'd like to drill in a little bit more on the values piece. Do you ever find that when you're working with an organization that they're not even really sure what their values are, or they don't feel connected to their values? I know when I'm working on a cultural transformation, that's the first thing I talk about is values. And a lot of times there's such a disconnect there. What do you find?
100%. I think it happens a lot of times. You see it happen a lot, and I've been in organizations where this happens. You see it happens as businesses begin to grow, is when it really starts to happen, right? You've got your founders, your startups, they have a vision, they have a passion, they bring that forward. As they grow, that begins to get diluted and begins to disappear. So I think it takes, a tough approach of realizing, okay, we've diverted from having a why, and we've moved too far into our what, right? And all we're trying to do is do more of what we do. And we've lost track of why we do what we do. It's also perfectly okay for those businesses to change that slightly, right? As it grows and as it expands, right? It's okay to change your why a little bit, right? But it is very important. And I often work with, companies to make sure that they understand what their why is, right? Get behind the passion behind your business, not just the product of it.
Yeah, especially in these times of environmental and social governance, right? Because in the skills shortage, it's something that job seekers are really looking at.
So
It is. It's very, 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 very looked at about, company culture is a huge thing, right? But if you can have company culture that is transparent towards your customers as well, so you're open and in that way, then, because what happens is if you're promoting a certain company culture, but you're not delivering that on your products and services side, well, then you've got this weird disconnect happening.
So I've got a little story that tells the difference between a need and a want. We got involved with two retired pharmacists who found out that a pharmacist spends 30 to 40% of his career going 1, 2, 3, very boring, right? And time consuming and a waste of time. So we developed a pill counter. We'd gone out, determined the environment it had to be in, all the rest of the normal stuff. And we had a benchtop pill counter. And when we came back out to sell it, it was like pushing a rope. And we finally figured out what was the problem. They need the pill counter because the ROI was like 4 months, right? No question. But they wanted to go 1, 2, 3, because it was like meditation. It gave them a place to hide from the stress of the day for a few minutes. And they weren't about to give that up. And we missed it. We spent a lot of money missing it.
Yeah, that's a great example, right? Like, I mean, if that's why I say it's not one or the other. You have to kind of do all of those, right? What are the problems? What are the needs? What are the wants? How can we look at all these things and connect them together, right? How can you be like, okay, they want this weird and, meditation thing of counting these things, but obviously the ROI, like you said, on your business was huge to have that automated. So is there a middle ground somewhere, right? Was there a way for them to have this, maybe a slightly different approach to it that made it faster, but still gave them a little bit of that in between?
Play a video for them while it's counting it for them.
Sure, yeah, right. But get some gamification going in it, right?
Anybody have any more questions? Are you ready for breakout rooms? Gary,
I have a quick question, Ruth,
Sure.
and that's got a lot to do with the drift towards self-services, self-service apps, self-service everything. So, if you understand how to navigate the internet and how to work with the internet. But, most services are going to self-service. So can you just comment on self-service for a few minutes, please?
Yeah, totally. That's a very, very challenging spot to try to get through, right? Again, this is a big point where I think it's so crucial to understand, truly understand your target market that you're going towards. Is that a self-service thing for 20 to 30-year-olds in the tech industry? If so, then you need to be really conscious. You need to be less conscious with your your UI and your UX, because it can be a little more loose, because these people are going to figure it out, and that's okay. Is it a self-service thing for people into their 50s and 60s who aren't nearly as capable on these pieces of equipment? Well, then you've got to have a really straightforward UI, a really simple user flow through that system, and you really have to hone in on what are the most important things of this feature. How do I forefront those into the simplest user flow that I can? And again, that's why it's so important to understand these things, because you can't design the same thing for each of those people, right? And I love to play with these ideas. Maybe that involves having a simplified version of the app, and then if the user wants to, they can have the more advanced version, and it's just two different user interfaces. Design your advanced user interface, right? What all those things are, and then pick from those things what the most important ones are, pull those forward onto a more simplified user face, right? And then you can kind of hopefully meet both criteria, but you don't know which of those things to pull forward unless you do that research.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I know that Gary at least is really.
Kaylee's got a question as well, I
Oh,
think.
awesome. Kaylee, sorry, you go right ahead.
No worries. Thanks so much. Hi, Freeman. My name's Kaylee. I'm a new graduate, actually, from the University of Lethbridge. I have a combined background in business and media, and I'm actually very interested in building a career in UX research. I think it's a really brand new, exciting field. Do you have any insights on any strategies or methods to building skills to position a new grad such as myself for that type of role?
Great question. Definitely just start doing it with real projects, whether that means you have to go find an organization to do a quick research project for on a volunteer basis, right? Go in and be like, hey, can I develop 3 or 4 user personas for you, right? Can I go do some interviews? Even if it's just creating your own internal types of passion project, right? Oh, I've always wondered if people really need an app for I don't know, buying the right kitchen knife, for example, right? Horrible example, don't do that one. But again, go find out, okay, if I'm selling kitchen knives, I'm going to go talk to 4 or 5 people who want to buy kitchen knives, and I'm going to develop some user research from them and see where that can lead from you, right? I think the biggest thing that I found from my schooling and understanding was like the simple parts of what makes UX are the most profound parts of what you make UX, in my opinion. It's how you use them, right? User interviews have been being done for decades, but how you use your user interviews is very important. How you create your user flows is very important. The way that you look at your customer journey and create those maps, very important. And if you're doing it just to validate a reason, you're doing it the wrong way. But definitely just, whether it be a passion project or for somebody, just start building up that portfolio of it, and be aware that you're going to have to adapt and change some things as you go. Certainly the system I use now is not the system I started using. I tweaked it and changed it and found things that worked better and things that didn't work as good.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Isn't that just the way of entrepreneurship, right? It's changing all the time. It's being able to pivot and not get too married to an idea. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to end this second poll, and we'll set up some breakout rooms unless anybody else has some questions. We've got time, so don't be shy.
I have a question.
Go right ahead, Iva.
The comment about people being in their 50s and 60s and not knowing technology, can you please explain that further?
Yeah, okay. Again, To be fair, probably shouldn't have said people in their 50s to 60s. That was far too an inclusive statement. There are some very people, you know, in their 50s and 60s who are very talented in tech, probably more so than people in their 30s and 40s. It's more of understanding, you know, again, who are the people that are going to use this product and service? Are they people who are, for lack of a better term, a bit technological illiterate, right? Are these people who still, you know, struggle with, you know, concepts of cloud computing and cloud storage, right? That's, you know, I know people in their 30s and 40s who do that. I think the biggest thing is, thanks, Mike. Yeah, definitely did. I think the biggest thing is, and I just didn't make that mistake, right, is that painting that broad paintbrush, right? So it's not about, and this is, again, a lot of market research was done this way. It was like, okay, cool. Our user base is people in their 30s and 40s who have children. And it's like, okay, but that doesn't actually tell you enough about those. That's a very quantitative thing. And I want to be more qualitative with what I want to do. So thank you very much for pointing that out. Definitely, it'd be more of, you know, is it a service that people need who struggle with technology, or is it a service people who are already well aware of technology? For example, if you're, you know, if you're doing a service for, let's say, you know, a mom and pop window cleaning company, right? Talking to people in the window cleaning company will let you know how, you know, those people sit within that market on their information. Again, I don't want to assume that people in window cleaning don't have, you know, technological abilities. That's something that you'd have to find out.
Well, from talking with people, it depends on their interests and what type of work they do. So, I mean, that's, to me, I just don't agree with that statement.
Yeah,
Just
for
make
sure.
that clear.
Yeah. No, definitely, and that I'm glad you pointed that out. Yeah.
Fair enough. Yes, those biases and stereotypes are alive and well in all of us. You know, we all have bias. It's not a matter of whether we have it, it's a matter of recognizing and knowing what it is. So yeah, and you know what? In your defense, the same thing happens about millennials, right? There's a lot of preconceived ideas about that as well. So
100%, right? And that's like a lot of it. Again, is a lot of what the reason I advocate for is that understanding of it, right? Is that understanding that we are, again, and like I said, definitely, you know, as Mike said really well, I definitely stepped into there, because it was that, you know, that mistake of being made that, you know, we're not being aware of that diversification and that understanding that we're all people on the other end of it.
yeah, Mike, you go ahead.
I had some real keen experience with that this week. I was editing video and trying to find an appropriate application for editing video. And I am technologically proficient, but Adobe Premiere is way beyond my capability, at least under the timeline that I have, the deadlines that I have set up for myself. So I had to find something that was much, much simpler to use. So it's not necessarily about that. It's more about domain experience than and technical proficiency in a particular domain than it is necessarily about age or even physical ability in many cases.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, especially as we get more and more into specialized roles and career paths and stuff like that, and even specialized applications, right? Specialized apps, specialized web browsers. All of these things are becoming much more niching. I mean, niche is another huge word that you get all the time, right? Identifying your niche, right? Well, maybe if you have a niche and you've identified it, go find out from that niche, you know, where their capabilities are, you know.
And I'll add that it's got a lot to do with either revenue generation or cost control. So like sometimes that's just the matter of fact that it's not a personality thing. It's, you know, hey, am I doing this to save a bunch of money and putting all this self-service in place? And it doesn't matter if they can navigate into it or not. I'm just trying to save money, which we see often. Or am I really trying to get close to the customer and create a strong relationship and really bond tightly so that I can get part of their wallet? So anyway, it's a lot of answers there, but thanks for the conversation today.
Yeah, great
No worries. Thanks,
conversation.
Peter.
Thank you, Freeman. Thank you. So I know that breakout rooms are something that everybody loves, especially Gary. He was just applauding. So we want to make time for that. So I'll put you in your breakout rooms. They'll be about 7 minutes. And then we'll come back and you can introduce yourself, talk about what you got going on. You're welcome to discuss our feature speaker today and what he's got going on. And yeah, we'll see you back here shortly.